Hello, welcome to Sacred Assumptions. My name is Alaric. I have a bachelor's degree in geology.
I'm Ben, and I have a bachelor's degree in apologetics.
So for this session here, we're going to go with the last part of our study through 1 Peter 5 and discussions, and then we'll have other discussions as well later on in the session in a different episode. So pay attention to that. And so our today's date is April 6th. So all information that we're going to have is relative to that time. So with that to go, we will get into the last section here of 1 Peter 5. I'm going to read it. So I exhort the elders among you, as a fellow elder and a witness of the suffering of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is going to be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you, not for shameful gain, but eagerly, not domineering over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock. When the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to your elders. Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility towards one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that in the proper time he may exalt you. Cast all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. And after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. To him be the dominion forever and ever. Amen. By Silvanus, a faithful brother as I regard him, I have written briefly to you, exhorting and declaring that this is the true grace of God. Stand firm in it. She who is at Babylon, who is likewise chosen, sends you greeting, and so does Mark my son. Greet one another with a kiss of love. Peace to all of you who are in Christ. Anything stand out at first for you?
Those who says, talking about a shepherd of a flock, not domineering over those in charge, over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's skipping over a few things, but
yeah, the previous part there of exercising oversight and under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you, but not for shameful gain, but eagerly, not domineering over those who in your charge, but being example to the flock. So, with it, of those who are elders or deacons or in leadership positions in the church, he's going over kind of other like qualities for them of, I would say, more personality of them. One is there of like they're not domineering over those in your charge, but be an example, and that like not shameful gain, but one that's eager to shepherd the flock.
I think also that it's sort of similar to or something I'm thinking about here is sort of similar to Christ, where in I think it's Philippians, where it talks about how Christ did not consider or became did not consider it
Himself equal to God, but humbled himself.
did not
Equate.
care did not care to
Equate.
make a point of that, but became a servant. Along those lines, basically saying that if he's going to death, then who are you to do otherwise? Same thing over here. It says I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is to be revealed. And then he describes what a shepherd is: someone who exercises oversight, but not under compulsion, and not for shameful gain, and not to domineer. And so, he's like Peter's, in a sense, considered to be like, he was the one that Jesus talked about giving the keys to the church, and talking about and possibly talking about how he was going to be like called him the rock. And so, along those lines, whenever he's saying that if he himself is not going to, or if he himself is going to consider himself just a fellow elder among them, because he calls on the other elders, and then he just calls himself a fellow elder, meaning that he's not considering himself above anyone else. And so whenever he says that, along those lines, if he's considering himself that just to be among them and not above them, then he's also telling them to not do anything under compulsion or be domineering. It's like, well, if I'm not even going to behave this way, why would you expect that it's okay for you to behave this way? Since Christ put me in this position, and I'm letting you know this is how I see myself among you. It's not like I'm, in a sense, above or over you. I'm one of you. So don't be thinking that you have any reason to think that you have any right to behave in a lofty way towards others who are under you. Because when you have the example of Christ, and then you also have the example of Peter, who sees himself as just among them or a servant of them. So you have more than one example. It's not just, you have more than one example of those who were in a high position but stressed being a servant, and stressed not trying to act like you were. Everyone should just like listen to everything you say, in a sense.
Yeah. It's a part of, I also think of when Jesus says, who's ever the greatest amongst you is the least.
Right.
Is that idea of, if you are an elder, you have to give yourself as the example of being the least. You're not a league above them. You have to go down with them and be example and live like they are. You're not, you'd say, in this position of power that makes you higher and mighty.
Yeah, I think probably in a sense of an applicable way to look at it is that if you're a leader or you're over people, that you don't use that as, okay, you will be taken care of before other people. If people may attempt to take care of you first, but whenever they're attempting to take care of you, in whatever fashion they may attempt to take care of you, you'll attempt to use that stuff first to make sure other people under you are taken care of, or you will make sure that, in general, other people, like they may attempt to like make sure you're fed or something like that first, but you will first make sure everyone else around you is taken care of before you are make sure that you are taken care of. And so that's the way I could see it being kind of like in a practical sense. It's just like you're constantly trying to make sure that everyone else is taken care of before your needs are met.
Yeah, and I think when he uses the example of the chief shepherd appears of Christ, is a key example of how a good shepherd is one that makes sure the sheep are well fed first. They are in a safe position before he has time to rest or feed himself. Is that if with it as a flock, a shepherd's first aim is for the flock.
Right. Although it does also mention on here that whenever it brings up the chief shepherd, that's more in a sense. And it's not so much of referring to do this like he did. It's when you do this like he did. When the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like here's also an incentive to be behaving like this and acting in this way, is that you will be able to embrace this glory.
Mm-hmm.
Which is usually, it seems like, and another time it seems like what's going on in these letters is that that's always an incentive, is that whenever Christ comes back in his glory, it's something you will be able to partake in some sense. So it's something to, in that sense, look forward to. It's not always just about, in a sense, humility. It's like there is still some sort of incentive besides it's for everyone else. It's like there is something that's intended for you, and it's something for you to look forward to for yourself.
Yeah.
But before that,
it is something worthy to strive for.
Right.
And that's the kind of, I think, what the part where it says, but willingly, as God would have you. The part there, willingly, is that you want it, and not for shameful gain, which is not our earthly gain, the positions and power it gives here on earth. It's, you're looking for the eternal reward.
Right.
You're not going to see it here.
So I think that in a similar fashion, where it says, but being examples to the flock, that's similar to what, whenever Christ talked about taking up your cross, that's similar thing here is like you're always supposed to be an example to others, and to the extent of taking up your cross and dealing with the constantly having to basically crucify the evil that's in you, or that you struggle with, and that once you have become an example of this, you will be able to receive the unfading glory. And so I guess that what I was saying is like, and similar with Christ, is that he made himself an example. He became a servant, didn't concerned about getting the glory or could be considered equal to the Father, or didn't concern over whether or not it was seen that way, but that he was an example, and that whenever it came time for him to, or similar to like whenever he comes to receive, or he did that, and then he was going to receive the glory. And so in a similar fashion, whenever we are examples for the flock, that whenever it comes time, we will also receive that same glory that he was able to receive. So there's always this almost like this constant example popping up.
What I find interesting in a section right there is not under compulsion, because it makes it sound like there were situations where possibly some of the elders were pushed into the position, but from outside sources. I don't know if it's like either you would have people who were like good friends with somebody be like, hey, you should be like an elder, or this, you had a person that's like, hey, he does well, he has a business, he should be an elder, or like for the person over here has good qualities, let's do it. And the people who were being asked were like, one were saying weren't willing, didn't think they were probably worthy enough, and other ones that were, I can do this, for there's gain for this, being in charge of this community, as there are two different people who are under the compulsion being asked to possibly be elders.
Right.
One is for the person who is being called to it and is probably worthy of the spot, but is like, no, I'm not worthy, or I don't want to. And if that's the case, like, if you're not seeking eldership, don't seek eldership. And if you view it as an advantage over the flock, or it'll boost your business or your position, that's not good either. That's the shameful gain.
Right. And then, along those lines, remember, it's not under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you. It is similar to whenever Paul talks about it in one of his letters about how it is good to desire to lead, or maybe it's be a teacher more specifically. That's good to desire that. Mm-hmm. But obviously, with these, it's like, so it's the same thing. It's like you should want to do it. It shouldn't be something that you're pushed into doing. And if you want to do it, then it should be for an appropriate reason, such as God would have you do it. Mm-hmm. So that's the main thing, is like always trying to make sure that you're doing it for the right reason, not for some inappropriate gain.
Yeah. Because one is today in its age, there's definitely a lot of gain, I would say, for it. Back in those times, it would probably be like, in a larger community, it would not be a large gain, but in some aspects, you could be in there, be like, I can get this community, and I can play both sides of the community, of the non-believer side and the believer side, and I have a large gain in both arenas.
That just sounds deceptive.
Yeah. I was just thinking, we saw a video earlier of how Christians in the early church were treated in the marketplace, where they were not normally allowed into marketplaces to do business because they were refusing to worship the idols that were at the marketplace, because they said there was only one true God, and so they were being cut out of like the marketplace and community. And so that idea is that there wasn't much gain possibly in the Christian community to be in a high position, unless you want to be in a high position for gain within that community, or you're willing to play both sides of the game of, I'm a Christian, but also paying service to the idols.
It also sounds like in here that whenever he mentions that you're not under compulsion, but willingly, not for shameful gain, but eagerly, and not to domineer over those under your charge, but being examples to the flock. Almost as if the other point of it is that, in not doing under compulsion, that you should desire to be a leader and have oversight over people, mm-hmm. But it's also to the point of you desire to be an example, mm-hmm. for those under you. It's not just that you want to be in charge, you want to, in a sense, boss and have control. So you desire to have them see, here's how to live out in a Christ-like manner.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that when people look at you, it's not, oh, he's domineering or he seeks shameful gain. It's like, oh, he exhibits this character of Christ that I can copy, and I see an example of it.
Which is also similar to with Paul, where he has told people, follow me as I follow Christ, which to me also tends to be one of those things where something I'll usually hear of believers saying whenever they get frustrated that other people will call them out on or question them about their faith because of how they might see something, that how they may have not been not shown an example in a moment they caved into a sinful situation, and they said, well, it's one of those things where they're like, well, don't look at me. I'm not the right example. You look to Christ. I'm just trying to figure this thing out. I'm like, I get it, but if Paul says to look to him as an example, why don't we say this? Yeah. So we should be able to say this. It's not like we're going to be perfect, but the idea is to strive for it. And to say, don't look to me, look to Christ, is like that's just I feel like that's more of an excuse to, it's more of an excuse so that way it gets you out of trouble with the situation. It's like, no, you should be putting yourself under that pressure because we're supposed to be behaving like Christ.
Well, that's a pretty good one right there. We're supposed to be Christ-like, and we're supposed to be examples of Christ.
Yeah.
We fail, but we still strive for it. Then it's going to come to a lot of part right there of humility. Or Peter's saying, one of humility to subject yourself under the elders, after we've just talked about for the elders of kind of their position of how they're supposed to behave. There's also a quality of the people who are underneath the elders. One of be subject to the elders. Right there, that you listen to them as they try to be examples of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And not to be probably with the part where they're supposed to be examples for the flocks. Be like, oh, you're just like me. Like, I don't have to listen to you because you did this or do that.
Right.
And Peter is also putting at it, there is in the position of elders, a bit of respect for it. That one is for the elders not to treat themselves with respect to be above other people, but also for the people underneath the elders not give them respect for the position.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the things where he's challenging the elders to be an example to the flock, and to the people who are underneath them. You could in a sense say be an example, but if you instead tell them, make sure you're subject to them. That's, if you don't do that, but just try it, almost in a sense, or just challenging them to be an example, then I could see how for the younger ones it would be more like you almost feel like there's a lack of humility that you're having to concern over. If you can almost be, if it's almost to the extent of you not having to concern so much over being under someone, but just being an example, you can kind of twist that into, okay, maybe I don't need to worry about listening to them if I think they're wrong. And it's like, no, have humility and essentially recognize that you should be subject to someone who is older than you or who has, in a sense, achieved more in the situation.
Yeah.
It's a way to humble everyone.
Yeah.
Different things is a way to humble everyone.
Yep.
Because there is that other aspect whenever Paul talks about with Timothy, don't let them look down on you for your age. I'm like, I think this here kind of shows that's, well, so I guess part of what I'm thinking with that is that I think people tend to stretch what that is referring to. And so it constantly makes younger people feel like, okay, I don't have to listen to these people because, they're looking down on me because of, how I'm looking at things. But it's one of those things where they tend to see themselves as they're probably right, despite how the older people are looking down on how they're looking at things. And like, well, maybe you just don't actually know. You're taking this probably a little too far. And this right here would essentially address that. Is like, yeah, don't let them look down on you, but that doesn't mean that you need to be having a big head about it. You still should be subject to the people. Now, granted, it could have also just been the fact that Timothy was really young when he was a pastor.
Yeah. It's probably one of those things of sounds like it's, I would also say one of those things of also for people who are older to look at people who are younger to actually kind of listen at times. Like
Right.
don't view your agent as being totally justified. And here it's also telling where the young people can be can lead as well. And here in Peter it's going like, hey, don't view yourself fully in the aspect of that you can ignore whatever they say with what Paul is saying to Timothy. Peter is going, there, you still have to be subject to your elders.
Mm-hmm.
There is some wisdom in what they say.
Right. Yeah, if anything, it's, well, like with the whole situation, Paul telling that to Timothy, it could also be the thing where Timothy was already feeling overwhelmed by the situation because Paul did also tell him to take some stuff because he wasn't feeling well. Mm-hmm. And so it was like the stress was getting to him, and so he's trying to give him ways to ease the pain. And so it's possible that for him, he was trying to encourage him because he was allowing them to, or he was like allowing them to walk all over him, even though he was in the right position. So there wasn't this issue of whether or not he was humbled or was struggling with humility. It was like he wasn't standing up the way he was supposed to. Whereas most of the time, people are probably having to tell you, calm yourself down. Just listen to them.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And then Peter here goes for the whole group of elders, the younger, the congregation of just everybody have humility. Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility towards one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. For if seems to be if there's a disagreement, that everybody should start off with consider others more important than yourself. And then go from there. Those who are the elders shouldn't consider themselves more important. Those who are younger shouldn't consider themselves more important. And then towards everybody there. And from there, the church would work a whole lot better.
mm-hmm.
In case there's any disagreements there.
Yeah, at that point, it's just like kind of like a blanket statement. And here's the Old Testament scripture that reaffirms that.
Mm-hmm.
That saying, here's why you would want to be humble. Because God won't oppose you.
Yeah. Then we get to verse 6, which it has a therefore. And many times we've always learned to ask, what's the therefore, therefore?
Right.
And Peter seems to give the answer right before the therefore. Of like, be like, therefore, humble yourself. But in our translations, it's humble yourselves, therefore. So
Right.
Peter is jumping the gun of like, what therefore is the humble yourself. And the key spot there is under God's mighty hand.
And it looks like it. Well, because it says for at the proper time, at the proper time he may exalt you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's referring to in this life, or if it's going back to whenever you talked about the when you receive the unfading crown of glory. If it's the same thing as like he'll exalt you in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Once you as you are humbled. Well, when he says at the proper time, if the proper time would be in the next life, or if he's actually talking about in this life, and there's just a certain point where he will actually give you a what do you call it, almost a sooner exaltation.
Mm-hmm.
Of a different sort, but it'll be a little sooner than that.
Yeah. Part of me goes for like how you should humble yourself in a way of you should humble yourself as you look at how your relationship is with God. If you view yourself in humble terms towards another person, that might cause anxieties, different worth that people would say of like, oh, he humbles himself. That person is, since he humbles himself, they might view him as in a lower position than other people. But Peter is going like, humble yourselves in a view of God, that all of you are in the same position under God, that you should compare yourself to God. And so from that, you have the humility towards one another that he mentioned earlier, because you know of your position with God. And so with that, God can exalt you if you know who you are under God, and so that God can use you the way he wants to use you. And that's how he exalts you, is he can use you in the way he wants you to be done for you.
And with this whole thing, because it's talked about receiving the unfeigned crown of glory, and that he may exalt you, and it's mentioned this kind of thing of glory a few different times. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if it's not a bad thing to desire it, but you just trust that God is going to do it in his proper time. Trust him, and when he does it, don't concern so much over the fact of getting it. You should look forward to getting it, because being exalted it looks like it's evidently an appropriate thing to desire. Otherwise, there's no reason for him to encourage you with it. And so it's a good thing to desire the exaltation and stuff like that, but just don't yourself worry about him doing it. Just focus on being humble and trusting God with the whole situation. Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting that he says, to humble yourselves so that way he may exalt you, or at the proper time he can exalt you, and then tax onto that, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you.
Yeah, that was going to be one of the thing that's going to always stands out to me, because it seems to me like out of the weirdest blue, you have this verse. He was like, okay, I want you all to be humble. Or if you have anxieties, cast it all on God because he cares for you. And then he switches over to be sober-minded, be watchful, because your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion. Mm-hmm. I'm just going, here's the thing about elders and members of the church being with humility. And then he's telling you to cast your anxieties on him. And then he goes into the devil. It's like, what sort of transition is this?
Yeah.
I find it very weird. I'm like,
it would almost make more sense to toss that, casting all your anxieties on him, a little after the roaring lion, a little after that your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a lion, because that's where your anxiety would kick in.
Yeah. It's like the weird transition between between the two. Because the only thing would be that in humility is that you'd be anxious about certain things, but also for that, when the devil is prowling around, you're also anxious about that. So there's something that connects it. But I've definitely seen a lot of people go like, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. I'm always thinking to myself, or that verse of like, do you know the context of what that verse is? It's very good, but I dare you to make it make sense. I dare you to make the sense of this context right here, because I'm confused.
Yeah.
Because one of it's just like, part of it's later on, it was like, oh, like, yes, things are against you. Like, things are hard because devil prowls around. And the other part's like, when you are in a humble state to cast your anxieties on him, it's like, which one is this supposed to be a part of?
Right.
There's a transition. It's not in a paragraph form, which would make it easier. It's in the middle of the paragraph. But
I mean, that's what he's trying to say is that you need to humble yourself, and part of humbling yourself would also be casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Is like maybe humble yourselves, and that is supposed to be kind of together, and then he's using the other aspect of the sentence in the middle to explain the point or how those two things fit together. Is that you do those things, and at the proper time he will exalt you. It's like you need to humble yourself, otherwise you're going to, or you need to humble yourself and be willing to cast these on him, and at the proper time he will exalt you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, because just for the English language, if there's like commas there, maybe it's like more of like humble yourself, casting your anxieties on him because he cares for you.
But that's the reason why he's telling you to humble yourself, because you're allowing the anxieties to build up. You're not trusting. You're just in the fact that you're not trusting. You're not humbling. You're not just like trusting him in whatever's going on.
There's an aspect of you need to be humble,
right?
Because otherwise, yourself doing stuff is you're going to create your own anxieties.
Well, I mean, at the same time, it makes it sound like you will have anxieties, but be sure to cast them on him or give them to him because he cares. So it's not making it out. It doesn't make it sound like it's bad that you have anxieties. It's just saying that you will have them, but to be sure to give them to him because he cares. And that if you don't give them to him, it's also another way of suggesting that you're not being humble. You're just trying to deal with it yourself. Which is why I'm wondering if maybe that's how it's supposed to be connected.
Yeah.
It's like humble yourself, be sure and cast all your anxieties on him. Don't try and take care of yourself because he does care. And then at the proper time, he will exalt you.
Yes. Then it comes to one of Peter's big catchphrases is to be sober-minded.
Right.
We've heard that a lot here. And First Peter is that if you're sober-minded and all of it. But this time he has a connotation for it because the devil prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. It seems to be more of if you are not sober-minded, it is easier for you to fall into the traps of the devil as he prowls around like a roaring lion. Because it is probably harder for a lion to capture somebody that knows it's around and keeping an eye on it, on somebody who's possibly drunk or nervous or scared.
I'm wondering if that's also connected to the humble yourselves and casting the anxieties on him. Because part of that would be, I guess in a sense, humble, maybe, make sure you have a clear mind, be watchful. Because, the devil's prowling around. And it talks about resisting him, being firm in your faith, knowing brothers are experiencing this as well throughout the world. It says, be firm in the faith.
Yeah.
So almost wonder if also the humble aspect and the anxieties are also another aspect of
Humbling yourself.
in a sense, yeah, it's like know what you believe, and in that sense, know what you believe, trust God.
Yeah.
While the devil's prowling around.
The part of if there's suffering being experienced by the brotherhood throughout the world.
And the simple-minded part would also be like, would also make sense under the humble yourself, because that's also, you aren't having a big head, you have clarity about, okay, here's what's going on.
Yeah. And wonder with if they're humbling themselves, and right there is that many people would be like, that would be, they're suffering for putting yourself in that position. Because a lot of the times if you do that, you probably have a lot of people calling against you, or there could be persecution for what you are believing. And there are a lot of people go, I have my rights, I need to express them. And Peter here is going, there's a difference between as a Christian calling for your rights and knowing how you're suffering as a Christian. So here he's saying, like, just like humble yourself in view of other people, because there will be times where they're going to be against you and it's going to cause suffering for you. And you could either get up and defend yourself in a way that is not Christ-like, demanding your rights, hurting other people, and then you have yourself not being Christ-like.
Yeah. It seems like the times where it's like discouraged to, like there's times where it talked about don't concern over whether or not you are being wronged by the enemy and stuff like that, but there are times where people like Paul are wronged by the enemy, and they are making sure things are put right. That like they say, don't worry if they're wrong, you just move along, and it is what it is. It happened. But he doesn't always do that. But it seems like usually the point of it has more to do with to make sure this doesn't hurt the church. Because whenever he's doing that, it's because, from my understanding, the church has heard some questionable things about him, and he's wanting to make sure the church understands that he's not actually done anything wrong. So that therefore doesn't weaken the church, doesn't weaken his weakness with the church. It's like whenever he wanted to make sure that since he was letting, I think it was the emperor or someone, know that he was a Roman citizen, so they shouldn't have been treating him this way. They're trying to let it, kind of slide it under the rug and have it be to where, it was just like a little mistake and they could just forget about it. And he wanted to make it he wasn't willing to do that. He wanted to make it an obstacle or make it, something that was seen. And the understanding I think I've heard about that, because it would seem like, okay, why don't you just like let it go? They goofed up. This is what you're supposed to do as a Christian. But it's the type of thing where, well, no, because the church had heard about this, and the church was aware that this whole thing had happened, and so I think there was a suggestion that they had been hearing rumors about stuff, so it was starting to hurt how it might affect the church, and so that way that he could ensure that this didn't affect them. He's like, he was like, no, I'm going to utilize my citizenship to make sure that this doesn't affect the church in a negative way. So it seems kind of like that's how it's intended to be, is like you will address it. If they are wronging you, you will only really address it if it looks like it's something that will hinder the church and how hinder the church and how they're viewing you. But you're concerned over that more so because you don't want, and how they're viewing you may cause them to drift in the wrong direction. And so it's always more so in the sense of trying to make sure that everything is as firm as it can be for the church as they are on their mission.
Yeah. Then you have the part where resisting the devil is to being firm in your faith. And that seems to be like a very, like a good point to be like, oh, if you feel like the devil is coming after you, to be like, you need to be firm in your faith. Otherwise, if you're in a position of being wishy-washy with your faith, it is easier for the devil to devour you than if you're firm. So the part there of, if you're not serious about your faith, you're like a leaf blowing in the wind, whichever way it goes. And if the wind blows too strongly in one direction, you're willing to go walk from the faith once it gets hard. Or if a temptation gets too strong, or if you're having stuff that like challenges you in your faith, and you have questions about it, and you can't seem to find the answer at that moment, is to look at your faith to see how God has led you through already, and where He's answered already before, that you can be firm in what you know, and to wait and see. Be like, I don't understand whatever this subject is, and it seems to be contradictory, and I don't seem to have the answer to it. But if I know elsewhere, I'm firm not to let this one spot shake the ground of your foundation.
Right. I don't think it's necessarily even a situation where you weren't serious about your faith. Mm-hmm. It's just that he might be coming at you that strongly, and it can feel like there is a serious threat, and it can cause you to be shaky. And it's mm-hmm. one of those things where it can come across as if it's legit and serious and difficult, but it's artificial. Like he's just making it out like it's more than it actually is. It causes you to cave in whichever way you do. And that's where the firmness would come in. It's like almost like, don't believe his tactics. Don't believe that he's actually is as strong as it is. He's just resist him despite what it comes across as. Doesn't mean that you won't suffer, but it's not probably to the extent that you are understanding it to be. Because I find kind of interesting that it says, resist him, be firm in your faith. It says, knowing that the same kinds of sufferings are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. I'm wondering if that's him trying to make it seem less, not necessarily intense, but less, what do you call it? It doesn't seem like it's such an impenetrable situation. Like if all the other guys that are my brothers in faith are experiencing this, then it means it feels strong, but it can't be overcome. It's not as strong as I'm thinking it is. If everyone else is, it's not like it's special for me, and so it kind of weakens it in that sense, maybe.
The roaring lion cannot just only be heard by you, but everybody else. The whole brotherhood is hearing the roaring lion.
Right. Now, I guess the other way along those lines of it comes around like roaring lion. I think another way that's I remember hearing this years ago, having to do with like whereas the imagery of the roaring lion has to do with he's circling, he's roaring a lot, he's giving you the impression that there's a lot of lions surrounding you, and you feel like you're just there's nowhere to go. You're something bad's fixing to happen, but it turns out it's just like scaring you, and it's utilizing the different abilities it has to make you feel like it's overwhelming, and then it attacks. Mm-hmm. And so that's similar with Satan. It's like he's making it out like it's more powerful than it actually is, and then he gets you to cave in, even though you could have resisted if you just trusted Christ. Mm-hmm. Because that's usually the way they make it sound like it. He's usually using some sort of a facade to make you cave in. It's like it's never a legit enough threat. The only legit aspect is that it is a threat. It doesn't mean that it's so strong that oh crap, I can't deal with this. Like, no, he's making this out to be way worse than it actually is.
Yeah, making it way worse. There's one roaring lion.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of roaring lions. So, I guess as we start to end this, go to the final greeting, one that at the end there is my question of she who is at Babylon, who is likewise chosen, sends you greetings. Like, okay.
Yeah, earlier when we read the she who was at Babylon, I assumed that it was Sylvanus, and I just didn't catch on to that who that was initially. But no, it says that he was a faithful brother, so they just slapped in a she. It's like, who is this she that you're talking about? You bring her up briefly. Did you just switch over to another dude?
Yep, and it's like most of the time people would normally in the Bible go Babylon as this evil place, and for Peter to be like saying gives you a greeting is like there's something there that's not like either somebody's in the midst of in a dangerous place is there, or it's not as dangerous as it seems. I'm thinking more of like the person there is in the midst of like their own trials, or where they have a lot of stuff that would be considered evil. But
I wonder if because he's describing it, I think so much what you're saying, he's describing it as they're in Babylon, or they're at Babylon. That it's one of those things where it causes you to question, are they legit? And he's like, they are likewise chosen.
yeah.
And so because of this, their greeting should mean something to you because they are a part of the church. They're just in a really bad spot.
Yeah. It's like there's a lot of evil there and it looks glorious, but it's also, you also see that it's evil right there. And so, yeah, part of me goes, who's this she? Is my first thought would be like, oh, is it something like Mary Magdalene or something like that? There was another lady in Acts that a disciple that Peter healed.
Isn't there a lady? There's a lady, I think in Acts. No, it's either Acts or one of Paul's letters, where he's bringing up a lady who has let her house be used as a church, I believe, and she has become wealthy through selling fabrics.
It's not Annas and Sapphira, is it?
That's two people.
Okay.
And they're a married couple. She was made out like she was single.
Okay.
That she was wealthy, and she was a seller of fabrics, like obviously nice fabric, nice linen or whatever. And so I would wonder is if she did that, if it would eventually bring her to Babylon.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just slip that in there. Don't.
Yeah.
She who's not worthy to be named, but she's in Babylon.
Yeah.
So that's just weird.
Yeah, it's just weird to be like, sounds like there's this important person there, but
then again, it's also whenever they say she who's at Babylon, it's almost like everyone knows who we're talking about.
yeah.
So there's someone who is distinct in Babylon.
Yeah.
And is also known to be chosen, I guess.
Yeah. And the church knows it, yet we don't.
Yeah.
Come on, Peter. It makes it sound like this letter was more personal.
Yeah.
But with that, I'd say...
So, there is a note that says, she who is at Babylon, who is chosen, is most certainly refers to the church in Rome, not literally a woman. Not a literal woman.
No.
Which I could also see that.
I can see that, but for myself, it just feels weird. He puts Sylvanus and Mark he's referring in his letter to two people in his letter.
Right.
And there's not like a transition between like Sylvanus and then Mark and then she who's at Babylon. It's in between.
Yeah, although at the same time, when he brings up Mark, it's almost like an afterthought. Oh, and also he does.
Yeah. But with that, I think that's the conclusion of 1 Peter 5. For that, we'll probably go for the next time on a different book of the Bible, probably 2 Peter. But with that, we can go to the next episode in this session right here.
Right. And
so if you're following along, just go over to the next episode on the list to see what we're going to talk to next.